afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is another one of our coffee chats, which seems is becoming a very popular format for us. So we're glad to have you here with us. So I'm going to invite you, if you haven't already done so, to go to Slido to respond to the poll while I do take care of some of the housekeeping here. We have with us for our coffee chat.
Cheers.
Dr. J.B. Ward. And JB is with Hospitality and Tourism Department, and we'll get into that in just a moment. Get into what he's here to share with us. Within our WebEx today, our moderators are Daniel and Gabby, and if you would like to have them open your mic, raise your hand, or put a comment in the chat, and they will open your mic and let you speak up. So I am just kind of trying to guide this conversation today. We'll see how well that works out. I suspect that's not entirely possible. But our guest today is Dr. J.B. Ward, and we both are able to speak freely and share. I'm sharing my screen, as you can see. Dr. Ward is not sharing his. But here's what's the key. You are the most important part of what we're doing today. JB is going to be sharing with us, but what we want to do is bring everybody's experiences in so that we can all share from each other. And this is our coffee chat format, which addresses itself to our whole community of practice, because by virtue of the fact that you have joined us, you are indeed a part of our community of practice. And so this is an experience where we share equally and learn from each other, which is really what it's all about. So let's take a look at what we have on our poll. So bear with me while I shift us to that screen. All right. So here's your responses, and we typically have been using Slido as our polling because of one of the ways that it will show up is in this word cloud, and the comments that you see in the larger font are the ones that have multiple responses in. So we can see that there's industry leaders. That may be a topic that we'll be talking about today. Case studies is an important one, and I'm glad to see that in there. Mentorship opportunities, I think that might be another topic that we get into a little bit today. And some sharing knowledge and experiences. So we're going to invite you to join in, and you can continue to add to this poll. It's going to stay open for a little while. So continue adding to this poll, and know that at the end of the session, I will send you the poll results for this and the other one that we have in here as well. So that's how we bring real-world experiences to our students. So now I am going to officially introduce you to Dr. J.B. Ward, who's going to be chatting with us about some things that they are working with in the Hospitality and Tourism Management Department that are really exciting. So let's take a look at the initiatives that you have talked about. So how about the partnerships?
So I'll start by saying that probably roughly 12, 13 years ago, Dr. Peter Ricci took over the department. And most of the colleagues in our department have work experience in addition to teaching experience. So a lot of what we draw on in the classroom is kind of our own experiences tied in with course content. When he started this program, he reached out to as many industry professionals as he could and said, okay, we have this course content, we have things that we want to teach in the classroom, but how can you supplement this material for us to make it beneficial to our students? So we began with the basic things that you would think of. I would say you would think of, which would be, are our students hireable? Can you hire our students? Let's start there. So we began many years ago to make a list of partners that we thought would want to reach out to our students for employment opportunities. Then we began another list of partners that hired our students. So that list currently is almost 800, and the list of industry folks that want to hire our students is almost 2,000. So that's a good starting point. So from there, we looked at anyone who wanted to speak to us from a partnership standpoint and said, you know, let's look at our curriculum. Let's look at things that we're doing. Let's talk about how we can make sure we're on the right track. So what do you think about this course? Are we on the right path? Is there something that we're missing within this course? So it started from that curriculum standpoint initially, and then it became, how can we get you in front of our students? Judy and I have joked many times before about, you know, if you teach a student or you're saying a concept or a certain thing that you want them to learn and they just kind of look like they're not really getting that, someone comes in from outside, says the exact same thing, and the light goes off, which is fine as long as the light goes off. So we find that the more we can get industry folks in front of our students to say, you know, the reason you should work here is, or this is kind of how I started, we think it's better off. We always want to know that there isn't a straight career path line for most of our industry professionals, as I'm sure everyone that's listening to this would agree. So I think a lot of that is the story. So we try to get out to them as much as possible the story, because we have a lot of students that are sitting in class that really don't know what they want to do. They're not 100% sure, and they probably haven't even heard of some of these companies before they come in the classroom. So we start there.
Yeah. Okay. And you had mentioned the student interaction.
Part of what we do, we look at the three major counties: Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and Broward. So a faculty member is kind of assigned to each of those areas, if you will. And we go out in those communities and talk to high school students, industry professionals. We join organizations and sit on boards so that there's a couple of reasons. They know that we're there. We foster those relationships. And then as much as possible, we invite our students into these organizational meetings to see, because they may not know what the Florida Restaurant Lodging Association is. They may not know what the Hotel Sales and Marketing Association of South Florida is, and they need to go to these meetings and see. If someone wants to be an event planner, and we hear that quite a bit, that students are like, oh, it sounds so glamorous, it's going to be great, then I would say the first thing you would want to do is go to a meeting planner's meeting and see exactly what that means, what it entails, and that they're not all celebrity weddings and stuff, things like that that may happen right off the bat. As much as possible, we want to do that. We also have initiatives in our classrooms. Our club and resort class, we have a meeting at the end of this semester. The students go to a country club that hosts, and we jokingly call it speed dating, because after there's a presentation by the club and there's a dinner, all of our partner clubs in the area come and sit in a room, and they do these quick 5-minute interviews with all the students in the class. Now, part of curriculum based is that is required for the students. They have to interview with everybody. But the other part of it is, in that 5 minutes, they may see something they like about one of our students and invite them back to their club for an interview. We found that we've hired a lot of students have gotten hired through that process. So for them, hosting the event is one thing, but everybody else just has to show up and talk to our students. So.
And you have brought me to brought into my mind another question. You partnership with the organizations within the communities, and yet they're not there to build themselves up and to promote.
Right. So anything that we do with them is that it's part of our course content and not, for lack of a better word, propaganda or something that they're coming in and just. So if we were to have someone from Seminole Casino come into our casino and gaming course, I guess a perfect example would be if there's a chapter on table games. We're talking about all the table games that exist within a casino. If the head of table games wants to come in that presentation and lecture, that is fantastic. And the last couple of minutes, it makes perfect sense that they would say, listen, at the Seminole Hard Rock, at the Guitar, which is going to open up in a couple months, what we're going to do for table games is we're going to do this, that, and the other. But they don't sit in there for the entire course and say, or the entire class and go, seminal. Like
Right.
that's not what we want them to do. We want them to supplement our material that we already have and say, take a look at this and see what you think, see what works, see what could be added. Like, is this how it works? I mean, everyone knows that the textbooks are a little bit behind. So has anything happened in the last year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it may be, since this course was written for this book that you could add that's different? And I use that example with that guitar because it's probably the newest thing that's happening in 2 months. And we know that there have been some major changes in that field since then. And so if they can come in and kind of tell the students they're a little busy right now, I would think, but if they can, that'd be great.
Yeah. So that in addition to bringing the real world into your students, you're also keeping your curriculum current that way as well.
If we say, you know, it's tough to do. It honestly is, because we can go to a meeting and they can sit there and say, we're looking for this. And we say, all right, well, we talk about those things in this course, but something that you mentioned, I didn't see in our course. So how can you give me more information on this, or how is that going to be relevant, or can you come in and speak to that? Within the College of Business, what we see a lot through this process is we have a lot of students that are not hospitality majors. They're taking a course of ours for a minor, or just to fill an extra credit that they have, an elective, and all of a sudden they see the relevance of an accounting degree in hospitality, a finance degree in hospitality, a marketing degree in hospitality. If I had a nickel for every time we heard revenue management, then, I mean, and that is something that honestly 10, 15 years ago existed, but wasn't where it is now, to where students may not know. We'll talk about videos a little bit, but what we see a lot of in this video series that we're doing is a bunch of students on camera saying, I took this class as an elective. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and this company came in and it just kind of, something happened.
Okay, and that brings me to moving to our next. And you mentioned your video interviews. You want to share a little bit more about that with us?
I do. What we try to do is get with industry partners that we have and put them in front of a camera for very short things. We'll talk about the attention span of not just students, anybody. So 7 to 10 minute videos where we're sitting kind of like we're sitting right now, very conversational. The script is pretty standard stuff. Tell us about yourself. How did you get to where you are now? And then towards the very end, we will talk a lot about their company. Usually in the background, we have some B-roll footage of the property or the business or whatever the case may be. But we have a lot of departmental leaders, team leaders sitting and saying, you know, I started here. I had no idea I wanted to do this. And now I'm doing this. For our industry, like a lot of people, there's no such thing as a typical day. And in hospitality and tourism, there is no such thing as a typical day. So we just say, tell us a little bit about what happens to you on a daily basis. The relatability to have someone on the camera that, like I had just mentioned before, hey, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think that is an instant click with our students going, that sounds like me. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And now I see someone who's kind of similar to me saying the exact same thing. And now they're successful within this organization. So usually 3 to 4 individuals from every property, restaurant, resort, event planning, whoever will say yes to us, which is a lot of people, which is great because quite frankly, they need to hire a lot of people, especially in South Florida. So we just sit down with them and have a conversation. And then that 7 to 10 minute edited video comes back. And what we try to tell them is, do not make this time specific. Don't talk about something that happened yesterday that's going to date this video, because we want this video to last 2 or 3 years on our content. As much as we possibly can, we take those videos and plug and play them into every course that is possible, whether it is hybrid, completely online, or an on-ground traditional class. We may add links through Canvas to that. And like I said, you go to a hotel, it's going to be your hotel course. Not necessarily, because the sales director may be in there, the person from finance may be in there, head of human resources may be in there. And so we keep that, we keep it going. We tell them 2 to 3 years, and we'd like to come back and shoot more videos. We've been doing this for, I don't know, 7 months, probably 12 or so videos. So the response has been amazing. And I think the response from our students has been pretty good, because it's another layer of content that
Yeah.
didn't exist before.
Yeah,
So,
and what an amazing opportunity. So these videos are department wide and can be used in any of your courses, right?
they can. And I guess the other important part about the videos would be that if the Breakers was coming to interview, let's say in November, we're going to shoot those videos out. We're going to include them in courses, and then probably 2 weeks before they come,
Yeah.
and a blast email to all of our students. Hey, the Breakers is going to be in the Stein Pavilion Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Here's a couple links to some videos. And then I think you get that face to a name kind of thing that is
Absolutely.
kind of students aren't really used to.
Yeah.
And they sit there and say, oh, I know who that person is.
Yeah.
Like I saw their video.
Yeah. And you have shared some pretty exciting stuff with us, JP. And yet, as you're talking, I'm thinking I can certainly see how it applies in hospitality and tourism, but I think it has applications pretty much across the board. And so now what I'm going to do is invite our guests that are joining us to either post in the chat room or let Daniel and Gabby open your mics so that you can speak up. If you have questions for JB, if you have some suggestions, if you have any reflections that you want to make, any comments about what he has shared with us so far, where we'd love to have some of that feedback.
I would say that it does fit well for our program, but I think that if your students, there's a company or two or three or four or five out that hires a bunch of your students, and this, then reach out to them and see what you can do. And so if you can't go somewhere and shoot videos, you can use Screencast-O-Matic or something else and say, can I email you 20 questions? And could you spend 5 minutes answering these so my students can see, what your path was, what you think they should know. That's something I should also point out. We always ask them to give advice to students.
Oh, nice.
If a student's sitting there and they're not sure what they want to do, not just why should they choose the company that you work for right now, but what would you tell them? Like kind of like that younger self thing of you should know this or not know that, or do this or not do that.
Yeah. Okay. And so Lisa has put a comment in the chat that what you're saying makes a lot of sense, that we're preparing learners for the workforce or for their profession. So why not immerse them in that as soon as possible? And that makes, you're right, that makes a great deal of sense. And Lisa often chats with us, so we can open your mic if you would want to. I can also take us back to our comments on the Slido. I know we had, and I'm guessing it was probably Nancy that put in there that doing case studies, because Nancy has joined us today, and she is in the health administration program, also in College of Business. And I know that they use a lot of case studies. Do we have someone else?
I think Lisa has some to say.
Okay.
Okay.
Join in, Lisa.
Hello, Lisa.
Oh, hello. This is such an important conversation. I'm so glad to have opportunity to join today. And Dr. Ward, I want to add that I've been teaching for a very long time, and quite often I have forgotten myself the importance of connecting our students, regardless of the age or the level of their learning, connecting them to the real world. Because that's really what it's all about. What we are doing in the classroom is preparing them for a wonderful profession or a vibrant workforce experience, or whatever they may choose. So I just think this is such a wonderful conversation to have. And it's just, for me, it's bringing everything back to why we're doing what we do for students.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and the thing that I would say also is there's some core stuff that we need to teach our students that they need to get in traditional methods.
Sure.
But then how we supplement everything on top of that, like you had mentioned, I think just makes it a stronger experience for them. I know that I think mentorship was on there, and our program, like many hospitality programs, if not all hospitality programs across the United States, there's always an internship component. And part of that is because we want them to get some experience before they quote unquote enter the real world.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing is many of our students across all, you know, professions or degree paths think they know what something is, and then they get there and realize that it's not. And
Yes.
and we want them as best we can to avoid that.
Yeah.
I don't know, trap is not the right word, but avoid that situation. So an internship while they're in school helps them realize it strengthens what they want to do, or it sends them in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
Right.
And I teach in the College of Education, and but always traditionally there has been that last semester was the internship. But recently the colleges have added field experience in courses leading up to it, which is extremely beneficial because you do not want to get into that last semester and get out there and realize you don't like kids.
Right.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Yeah.
the field experience that my students get gives them an opportunity to actually think about themselves on the other side of the desk, which they haven't been up until then. So it's an opportunity for them to really see what it's like out there.
Yeah. And may I add one more thing?
Sure.
I don't want to monopolize the conversation, or I want other people to have a chance to chat as well, but I made the connection to objectives, right? So when, for example, when we are explaining to our students the why behind what we're doing, oftentimes we'll use the objectives as the reason. Well, we'll say something, well, we're preparing you to, meet this objective or be able to do this thing or whatever. And as you were talking and really explaining the wonderful things you're doing for students, I was thinking of connecting them to that experiential piece as the why, and showing them and getting them to roll up their sleeves and have them literally experience the why behind what they're learning and what they have to be upskilling almost. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, case studies, I can't say enough about case studies for a lot of different things. And our industry is constantly evolving. So probably in the next 6 to 7 months, if no one has heard, for us, it's going to be this minimum wage fight. And this is not the forum to sit here and talk about minimum wage fight, but that's something from a case study standpoint in our industry that's going to have a profound impact one way or another, where probably every course that we teach, we could somehow incorporate that into what happens if yes and what happens if no. So
yeah, and that's bringing it right to the very present. How do you what's coming down the road for us, and how's that going to impact it? So I have
Nancy would also like to.
yes,
sorry.
Join in, Nancy.
I'll go ahead and
All right. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Doing well. How are you, Nancy?
Pretty good. I just wanted to say what a great idea, connecting the students with the organizations in that way. As Judy had mentioned, I'm from the Health Administration Department. I do use virtual scenarios in my online courses to kind of get that hands-on experience, but having the organizations actually provide these short interviews or videos to kind of give the students the feel of that organization, I thought was amazing. And just that speed dating concept of everyone kind of giving a 5-minute overview of what they're about and stuff. I think that's awesome. That's such a great way to kind of connect everyone.
I will say that we were at a retreat, for a faculty retreat, a couple weeks ago. We had the Career Center come talk to us. So I think our next phase is going to be, they have an amazing setup where, and I'm speaking from the College of Business, I'm sure this is campus wide, but they have an amazing setup with a video series where students can do mock interviews, a lot of that trepidation about, I'm really nervous to sit there. And our next step, I think, is going to be when we have our partners around us, is just to do a quick 2 or 3 second video, just like you said, Nancy, for one of your professionals to say, this is my go-to interview question, or this is a question that I think the students are going to get asked. And we want to build a hospitality specific kind of interview template within that, so that our students can go there and be as prepared as possible. The speed dating thing, all kidding aside on that term, it's pretty quick. And I think we all know that first impression thing. And now you're talking about many first impressions kind of spread out over a couple hours. And then it's like, if we could ring a bell, we would to get them to move on. But if we're trying to keep it to
Yeah.
where it's 5 minutes or less.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And so many fields, that would be such a beneficial piece for the students to have some idea of what the expectation is going to be when they really get into that interview process.
And I know in Nancy's case, I know they have some amazing partners
Mhm.
already in that program. So
Yes.
it's just a question of, look, time is valuable. So maybe for you, Nancy, maybe it's something that we talked about, setting up something where they just spend 5 minutes in front of their computer at first, and then eventually you work into, is there any way you can come to campus, or can we stop by and just shoot a quick video where you talk to our students about it? Virtual is
that's a great
fantastic. What
idea.
you're doing there is great. I think it's so much, as much as we can get something new for them to relate to. And it's not to say that the status quo is okay, but I know when we're building our online content, we just started a fully online program in the last year. So we are definitely trying to ramp that up and supplement it where it's not that traditional online thing. And then obviously Judy and her team have a lot to do, just what is in the content, but then beyond that, what can we put in that makes it even more interesting for them?
And trying to implement it, I think, for the online students is so important. We've had a boot camp in our health administration section for students, but it was on campus, and we're launching it online this semester.
Nice.
And I've been working with the professor where we're trying kind of to translate what we do on campus, online, and, with the field trips and stuff, it's going to be, it's interesting, but we're doing our best. But this concept is such a great idea for something like that, where students can get an idea of, they just connect with different organizations, get a clear idea of what's out there and,
Yes.
what to kind of expect, I think.
Do you think you could get them to, for example, your case studies? I'm spitballing here. I think it'd be really neat if you could get them on video to read the case study or present the case study to your students in a virtual format. And then you say, here's the case study for whatever this is going to be. And it's from an industry professional. Like, that'd be pretty neat.
That's such a great idea. The way the virtual scenarios we have at the moment is that it's actually from a publisher. But when it's the way you're saying it, where it's the actual organization and they're kind of, we're able to present it that way, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and pretty much local, although your students aren't necessarily local.
Exactly.
But yeah, if it's someone that they know there's an office around the corner from them, that really would make an impact, I think.
Yes, because we have, like, even with our field trips where they're going to be going to a hospital, we have a couple of international students, and we're hoping that, to get them to also reach out to healthcare organizations in their area and share that. Kind of like a short video with us on what's going on their end. But I love these ideas.
I think we had
I'm like jotting everything down.
Visit the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Berlin for our online students, which we thought was just awesome that they actually did that for their course, that they just walked in and said, hey, I'm a student at Florida Atlantic University, and I just want to check out this meeting and see what it's all about. It was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yes, very cool.
That also ties in, we've have built a couple of courses for public administration. One in particular, recent one, was nonprofit, being involved in a nonprofit organization. And I know that those students have to go and volunteer at one of the nonprofits in their area. And in order to get that perspective of how they deal with their volunteers, and so that's truly bringing that real world into it.
Exactly.
Thank you, Nancy. So what I have put on my screen here, and I did not fill out I didn't go ahead and fill out the other side of it, and I'm not going to do it while we're online, but what I will do is take the comments that we make and fill out the rest of this chart before I send it out to those of you who are joining us. So I would love for you to either let Daniel and Gabby know and open your mic, or put something in the chat about how these different departments could use real world applications, what kind of real world applications they could use. Most of it, when you start to think about it, it's pretty obvious and we go, oh yeah, of course. So any comments, anybody want to make any comments? We've talked about, Nancy filled us in on some health administration information. And Lisa and I both have talked about the field of education. What about some of the real world applications for some of these other topics? Anybody want to jump in there?
So Mary was actually asking, how can other schools slash departments that don't have the SOB relationship to their communities replicate what you've done?
Well, I think the first thing would be to look at the relationships that they have within their department and
Yeah.
start there. Kind of like what we were saying with Nancy is, do you know someone in your field that, whether they're local or not, is willing to be a partner with you and start there? And say, as much as possible, we want our students to be successful. And part of the tools that we think they need to be successful are, experiences or things that they should look out
Yeah.
for. And so can you kind of just spend a few minutes with us in any format that you want and tell them and us as educators what you think they need to know, or what's beneficial, or what your career is like. Education, to me, when I see that on there, I always laugh because probably a lot of us in education did not start off in education, and that wasn't
Yeah.
the dream. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with that, but it wasn't where we thought we were going to be
Right.
going. And it's interesting on this sheet, we have our intro course probably has 100+ students in it every semester, including summer. And there is an assignment in there that they read a bunch of articles and it says, have you started thinking about hospitality based on this? If so, yes. If no, why? And if you look at that list, there's probably 4 things on that list that they say, well, my major is this and I didn't think it was relevant to your industry. And I'm like, let me just stop you right there and tell you how it is relevant
Yeah.
to our industry, which is not to tell you you need to do it. But if you were thinking there was no connection between, criminal justice
Mhm.
and hospitality or social work or whatever it is, I mean, that's usually where I spend a couple minutes in replying online or in person and saying, I'm not trying to steer you or force you to do something in our major, but understand that it's there. And that there's a lot of opportunities within our discipline that you could do that if you wanted to.
Yeah. And there's outreach in almost every field.
Yeah.
Some form of outreach.
But that's what I would say, Mary. I would say, look at the relationships that are already there. If you present it to them, I just don't understand how it's not a win-win. They're going to get in front of your students. They're going to get to talk about their company, and I hope that it's strengthening the product, if you will, from us, which is our students when they graduate. And I hope it narrows the focus down for them for what they want to do.
And in every field, that's one of the comments that comes back when we're doing surveys in any field is they want the students to be ready when they come out. They do not need to spend the time and money to retrain them. Yeah.
And there's always going to be aspects of training that go along with any company they work for.
Yeah.
But having the base knowledge and as much as they possibly can to walk in the door and be ready to go. And I think that's a goal
Right.
for all of us. And
Yeah.
so for us, reaching out to our partners and creating these videos and doing the speed dating and internships and having them go to meetings. I mean, look, a lot of that is networking. A lot of what we do in our field is networking and who you know. South Florida is massive and it's also really small. So in our field, you don't want to burn bridges because you're probably going to move around and work for somebody you worked for before. And it's a running joke in our field and our industry down here. So there's always going to be jobs, but it's building those relationships. We had a monthly mixer and we actually gave it as an extra credit opportunity for a bunch of our students. And all they said after that was, I met so many people, I didn't even know who they were or what they did until I went to this event. So that's a huge thing for us, is to say, that they got some experience and they also got to meet some people that probably are players in the field in this area.
Right. Yeah. And that's a great point, that there's always, I always try to encourage students to go to, say, a faculty meeting at a school or go to a school board meeting to see all the different aspects of what it means to be in that profession. Yeah, excellent. And I put on here literature. just as a point to think about, because we can do real world applications in anything. I've worked with someone recently who did, his topic was Florida authors, and had several books and several authors. Now, many of them, of course, have long since passed, but he also, he brought in an interview with someone who is current and actually an FAU graduate, but he also had within the course to have the students conduct a pseudo interview with one of the authors who has passed, and how they would respond to some of the questions. So the real world can be brought in, I think, in any field, in every field. It's just a matter of wrapping our heads around.
And I said, checking all the boxes in home run, touchdown, whatever cliche you want to use. If we can get someone in front of that camera who went to this school and is now in the industry
Yes.
working and is an industry leader, I mean, you can, unbelievable. When those students are just, the relatability to that they're just like they are. I mean, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, makes a huge difference, makes a huge difference. So I am going to, anybody want to add anything to the real world applications for any of the things that I might have currently on the screen? Computer science is one that definitely there's the opportunities almost literally right around the corner. And as well as, and we know that social work incorporates a great deal of real world experiences and opportunities. So I'll fill this in before I send you out, or fill you in with some of the information before I send this PowerPoint out to you. So what I'm going to do is ask you, I better open it up first, ask you to go back to Slido, and it's the same link. I will show you in just a moment. But I'm going to open up the next poll in Slido, which is, what's your takeaway? Are you ready to try something new and different, or to suggest it to someone that you may be talking to? So I'm going to invite you to go into Slido and put some comments in on that. And while we can go ahead and go back and chat about some of the other opportunities available for us too. Okay, what's your takeaway? What's a key point from this that you are ready to jump in there and try?
And don't be afraid to try multiple things, for sure.
Yeah.
To see, I mean, this video was born out of other things. It wasn't like we just jumped in and went, this is going to be fantastic. We had done a bunch of other smaller things. But, you know, the point is, if someone's in your building or your college and they're sitting at a table and those students are talking to them, then it's not beneficial for you or them, and you're probably not going to see them again. So as much as we can supplement that in all platforms, and then they show up, I just think, I mean, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm going to be naive here and say, JB, I think maybe the idea for doing the video thing started as you all were creating online courses and adding video into those courses.
I would agree.
And it just moved right from there.
And I'll say something else. Something that I do, and it's just kind of a side thing if you're teaching a lot of online content, is I use Screencast-O-Matic for 10 to 15 minute audio only summaries of the PowerPoints, which is very conversational and me just kind of highlighting the greatest hits, if you will. It's not me regurgitating the information on the PowerPoints. It may be me elaborating on a point on one of the slides. And I have gotten some comment from students on the fact that they like that a lot, that it's above and beyond, but it's just a nice little extra piece to it. So.
And a Screencast-O-Matic is a valuable tool. I will also add that I need to go in and review as well as share it out with everyone else. Flipgrid has added a whole lot more into theirs, where you can do it literally on the phone and you can share it out. So we'll send out more information about that. So we've got the speed dating idea has really caught on.
Good. I like it. That's perfect.
And and getting organizations to come in and provide what they need to know. Get to know the students to help plan those experientially experiences.
That's a great point. Have your students help you create the questions for these 5-minute
Yes.
video things
Yeah.
that your industry partners are going to do from their desk. And say,
Definitely.
here's some questions that I have for you, and here's 5 questions from our students.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which basically is kind of what we're doing in the videos anyway. But yeah, I mean, that's a great idea, is to have them think of some questions themselves to add to it.
What they really want to know. Yeah. And virtual platforms to connect students to experts in the field. That's one of the really amazing things that we have. And you can even use those virtual platforms to connect to people not necessarily local. I know we did a course where the instructor did interviews that were conducted just like this, only virtual, with people that were in other places, and that would still be able to be used in your course. So, any other comments?
Any
Virtual
chance you get
platforms.
to have speakers come to your courses, tape those, video those as much as you can, and
yes,
put them online. I mean, that's always a
Yeah.
nice little resource. We would say it's because if you miss the course, and that's part of it, but the other part of it is that I think it's just a good thing to have to show, in the future, if they can't make it in the spring and they can make it in the fall, here's a link to, the head of company XYZ came in and talked to us for 45 minutes. It's fantastic.
Right.
And most of our classrooms, or there's at least a classroom in every building that should be set up for that, I believe.
Yeah, but we also have the capability of simply doing an interview, and I have a sister who's a retired nurse who lives in Albuquerque. I would be more than happy to have her do an interview
Yeah.
as far as the nursing field and the experiences that she's had. So it can be an outreach to no matter where, because fortunately we now have capabilities of connecting wherever and whenever.
I would also say what you just mentioned, I think is also a great point. Someone who's fresh out of school, who's on that video, and
Mhm.
someone who's been doing it for 20 or 30 years
Yes.
is also fantastic, to have that perfect mix within the same company. First of
Mhm.
all, one thing I look for is tenure. So we're doing these videos, however you want to do them in your field, and someone says, I've been there for 15 years, the wheels start spinning in my head, because that's pretty rare in our field. I wouldn't say it's unheard of, but to have somebody that's like, well, I interviewed someone 2 weeks ago that's been there for 25 years. And that's a very, very long time for any of us, but
Yeah.
especially for
Yeah.
what this person was doing. And so, in the middle of these scripted questions, I stopped and said, why have you been here for 25 years? Like, not as a joke, like, why are you still here?
Right.
What's made you stay? And then she got to talk about company culture for a long time. And,
Yeah.
she's had many bosses, but she loved it. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. And that's not so much the norm in today's culture, to be any place for more than 5 or 6 years, which is just simply a change that some of us who are not necessarily familiar with, or comfortable with, and yet it works.
And even less with this new generation of
Yes.
students that are
Yeah.
coming up. Depending, not all of them, but that's something that again, the dinosaurs like us are having a hard time kind of adapting to this, 3 jobs in 3 years model, where you said 5 was the norm and you stuck it out whether you liked it or not, because you had to get 5 years on your resume. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
All right. So thank you. Know that this particular poll is open. If anybody wants to continue to add in, I'm going to take us back and just kind of wrap things up a little bit for you. And let you know that next Monday, we will not be broadcasting from here, because next Monday is Labor Day and it's a university holiday. The following Monday we'll be doing our orientation for any newcomers into the center, the e-certification workshop. And so that said, when I send this information out, I will also be sending the links for you to have to share with anybody who wants to join the e-certification workshop. This is a part of what we do in that workshop, but it also is a whole lot more than that. So I'm going to say thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for all of your comments and your input into what we're doing and how we're sharing. I do love this format because what I personally think that everyone that we reach out to, that we connect with, are superheroes, our superstars. And if you can hear from a colleague something that has worked for them, it's really, really special. Thank you.
Have a good week.
Thank you. And thanks, Lisa. I appreciate your comment.
And Nancy and Mary, thank you.
Yes, Nancy, Mary, thank you for joining in. And we will connect up with everyone later on. Thank you so much.